Daniel walked into the CEO's office, his steps echoing slightly in the vast, opulent room. He wasn't supposed to be here. A junior programmer, a nobody, really in the grand scheme of this tech empire? But he had something that belonged to the man sitting behind the massive mahogany desk, a man whose decisions could change the lives of thousands. The CEO, Mr. Harrison, looked up, his brow furrowed with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. "You have 5 minutes," he said, his voice clipped and impatient. Daniel took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly as he reached into his worn backpack. "Mr. Harrison," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. "My father was Michael O'Malley. He worked here for 30 years. The CEO's expression didn't change. The name clearly meant nothing to him. "He was a janitor," Daniel added softly. "He cleaned this very office for most of his career." A flicker of vague recognition crossed Harrison's face, but it was gone as quickly as it came. 30 years of service, and he was just a ghost, a name on a payroll sheet. "I see," Harrison said, his tone dismissive. "And what is this about, young man? A pension issue? Your father passed away a few months ago, correct? HR should have handled everything." "It's not about that, sir," Daniel said, pulling out a small, intricately carved wooden box. He placed it carefully on the polished desk. It looked ancient, out of place amidst the sleek, modern technology. "This is for you." "My father wanted you to have it." Harrison stared at the box, then back at Daniel, his suspicion growing. "What is it?" "Some kind of gift?" he asked, not touching it. "It's something he made," Daniel explained. "He was a woodworker in his spare time. He spent his last year carving it." With a gentle push, Daniel slid the box across the desk. Reluctantly, Harrison reached out and opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a stunning, handcrafted chess piece. A king. It was carved from a deep, rich walnut, polished to a soft gleam. The detail was incredible, the tiny crown, the determined set of the face, the flowing robes. It was a work of art. Harrison picked it up, feeling its weight in his palm. It was solid, substantial. "He made this for me?" he asked, his voice losing some of its edge. "Why?" "He always said you were the king of this castle," Daniel said with a small, sad smile. "He watched you build this company from the ground up. He saw the late nights, the stress, the sacrifices. He admired you, sir, truly." Harrison was silent, turning the chess piece over and over in his hand. He'd received countless awards, plaques, and trophies in his life. None of them felt like this. This was personal. It was a tribute from a man he'd never even known, a man who had silently watched his life unfold from the shadows. A wave of something unfamiliar washed over him. It wasn't pride. It felt more like humility. He looked at Daniel, really looked at him for the first time. He saw the earnestness in the young man's eyes, the quiet grief for his father. "Thank you," Harrison said, his voice softer now. "Please, tell your family. This is remarkable." "I'm honored," Daniel nodded, but he didn't move to leave. He reached into his backpack again. "There's something else," he said. He handed the CEO a small, battered notebook. The edges were frayed, the cover soft from years of handling. The pages were yellowed and crammed with tiny, neat handwriting. "My father wrote in this every night after finishing his shift," Daniel explained. The CEO took the journal, his fingers tracing the worn cover. He flipped through the pages. It wasn't a diary of daily events. It was a collection of thoughts, quotes he'd overheard in the hallways, lessons he'd learned from watching people, observations about human nature jotted down with a philosopher's insight. There were notes about small acts of kindness he de-witnessed, a secretary sharing her lunch with a new intern, a manager staying late to help a struggling employee. He also found pages filled with regrets, small moments of impatience, or a harsh word he wished he could take back. Harrison's breath caught in his throat as his eyes scanned the tiny script. "Every day I sweep the floors, but I also try to sweep away a little bit of someone's trouble." Another entry read, "A smile costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable. I saw it pay a dividend today when the young woman in marketing smiled back. Her whole face lit up. He saw sketches of people, little caricatures drawn with surprising skill, capturing their essence in a few simple lines. Then he found a page where one line was underlined. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, etched into the paper with a firm, deliberate hand. A job is what you do, but kindness is who you are. The words hit him like a physical blow. He thought of his own days, filled with meetings, deadlines, and stock prices. When was the last time he'd thought about kindness? When was the last time he'd performed a selfless act, not for strategic gain, but simply because it was the right thing to do? The company he'd built was a success by every metric: revenue, market share, innovation. But what was its soul? What was his soul? He swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. He looked up at Daniel, his own multi-million-dollar world feeling suddenly small and hollow. He wrote these for himself? He whispered, his voice barely audible. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, sir. He wrote them for you. Harrison's eyes widened in disbelief. For me? But he didn't know me. He knew you better than you think, Daniel replied. He saw you at your best and at your worst. He saw you celebrate victories and weather storms. He said you had the mind of a genius, but he worried you were losing touch with the heart of the company, the people. The ones who clean the floors and answer the phones. He wrote these, hoping someday someone important would read them. Someone who could make a difference. The CEO closed the journal gently, placing it on his desk next to the wooden king. He felt the weight of those 30 years of unseen service, of unspoken wisdom. He had been the king, yes, but he had been completely oblivious to the quiet philosopher who kept his castle clean. He felt more unworthy, more humbled than he had in his entire life. The janitor, Michael O'Malley, had just given him the most profound and painful performance review of his career. He looked at Daniel, the son who had honored his father's last wish. Your father, Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion, was a great man. Daniel simply nodded, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. The next morning, an all-company memo went out. It was from the CEO. It didn't talk about quarterly earnings or new product launches. It started with a simple story about a janitor and his journal. It ended with a single underlined quote, "A job is what you do, but kindness is who you are," and from that day on, things began to change. It started with small things: the CEO learning the names of the cleaning crew, a new company-wide initiative to recognize unsung heroes, a culture that began to value compassion as much as competition. The king had learned a lesson from the janitor. The castle was still a powerhouse, but now it also had a heart. Michael O'Malley was gone, but his wisdom was finally sweeping through the halls. Thank you for watching. The quietest voices often have the most important things to say. If you believe in the power of kindness, subscribe for more stories that inspire. See you next time.